pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anybody have any questions on the agenda? Motion to approve? Rob, second. Kimberly, all in favor? 6-0. We're going to start this evening with some real special student and staff recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Zukowski. I'm going to introduce our wonderful advisors to the National Junior Honor Society, Dr. Chowsky, Mr. Haywood, and our middle school principal, Dr. Anthony.
Dr. Chowsky and I had the privilege of being the advisors for the National Junior Honor Society at Prodell Middle School this year. Membership in the National Junior Honor Society is open to students who meet the required standards in scholarship, leadership, service, citizenship, and character. In November, we held an informational meeting for parents and students to explain the criteria, share the rubric that was used by the Faculty Council when reviewing student applications, and the rubric that was used for rating the essays. In February, students who met the initial criteria of having a grade point average of 90 or higher were invited to apply. In accordance with the national guidelines, the applications and essays were reviewed by the Faculty Council in March.
We are proud to announce that on April 25th, 2017, there were 103 students who were inducted into the National Junior Honor Society. On that evening, the current officers, President Troy White, Vice President Lydia Radonovich, Secretary Larissa Verdi, and Treasurer Taylor Paperno did an outstanding job with the candle lighting ceremony and announcing the inductees. The membership oath was administered by Dr. Anthony, and the students were presented with certificates and National Junior Honor Society pins. The students also presented Dr. Anthony with a lifetime honorary membership in the National Junior Honor Society in recognition of her dedication to educating the whole child as she retires at the end of June. We would also like to thank Board of Education trustee Dr. McGrath, Mr. Lederer, our interim superintendent, and Mr. Poole, our new superintendent beginning in July, and Mr. Meinster for attending the ceremony. As you can see by the pictures behind you, there were many proud students, administrators, teachers, parents, and family members that evening as the students who were inducted celebrated the first of what we believe will be many accomplishments in their educational journey. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Haywood and Dr. Chowsky for stepping up into that role of working with the Junior Honor Society. We know it's a lot of work. I know it's rewarding work, but it's a lot of work. So on behalf of the board, we just wanted to say thanks.
I also just wanted to add one little thing. It was a pleasure to be in a crowd where everyone was eye level because those kids were awfully proud and they walked it. And it was well deserved.
Our next presentation, we were quite fortunate to have one of our students participate in an automotive technology competition, won at various levels, and to recognize that individual, I invite Mr. Holtzman to the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Lederer. Good evening, board members. It is my pleasure to reintroduce to you John DeLuca. As you recall, John was recognized at a board meeting about a month or so ago for his for winning in the regional competition for automotive. He recently was preparing for, at that board meeting and moving forward, was the National Automotive Technology Competition, where he competed against 29 other teams from across the United States and one team from Canada. He ultimately, as you know, was reigned a national champion, which earned him thousands of dollars in equipment and scholarships and full tuition to technical school. This truly demonstrated the true meaning of transfer of knowledge from all the skills that he acquired during his time at the automotive program at HB Ward into real life scenarios that paid educational and life dividends. I'll turn it over to John at this point to describe the tasks he had to complete.
Hello. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I had to do at the competitions. So I pretty much had 3 competitions. There was a regional, a state level, and a national level. I took first place at all 3 of them. So pretty much what I had to do at like the nationals, it was a 2-day competition. We got put up in a hotel in Times Square. It was pretty cool. But so yeah, there was all different teams from like Canada and everything. So they take planes and stuff here, which I wouldn't do that, but hey, good for them. So the first day, it was pretty much all workstations. So we had everything from like job interview, there was circuit diagnosing and testing, balancing tires, air conditioning tests, CAN bus tests, pretty much you had to know what you're doing. So that was the first day. The second day was on-car, so I had a 2017 Chevrolet Malibu that I had to work on with my partner, Evan Wagner. He goes to Eastport South Manor. They pretty much give you a brand new car. They put a bunch of bugs in it and say, hey, here's the car, here's a repair order, check engine lights on, fix everything you can. So pretty much me and Evan, we went around the car, found out all the problems. It was a crank, no start. So I hopped in, cranked it, no start, up, checked fuel pressure, had no fuel pressure. So then, which brought me to the wire diagram for the fuel pressure, like the fuel system. So I went through the relay was good, fuse was good for the fuel pump, which then brought me down to the fuel pump driver module. So I had to, what you do is you take it off the car, unbolt it, bring it over to the parts counter, say, hey, is this part in stock? If they have the part, get it, put it back on the car, start it up, everything's good, check the codes, clear everything. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, John. The next 2 students I'd like to recognize are Liam Clifford and Christian Wusselborg, if they could come on down. Liam and Christian participated in the 2017 Long Island Youth Summit. It's a summit in its 8th year, bringing high school students together for one day of interactive workshops with experts in the field of medicine, environment, business, and the economy, and leadership. The summit asked students to complete a research project that focuses on problems facing Long Island. There are several categories for students to choose from, and each student has focus questions as well as links to their research to help them with their research. Each project is submitted and reviewed by a committee. The committee then invited upwards of over 500 students from all over Long Island to attend the summit and meet with other students that worked on the same issues. These students participated in a workshop led by real leaders that are working to solve these problems. There were 4 topics in this year's summit and 11 subtopics. The 4 topics were socio-medical issues, environmental issues, our communities, and special issue. Liam and Christian submitted their video under environmental issues and renewable energy. They were selected as finalists and invited to represent our high school at the summit on April 7th, 2017 at St. Joseph's College. Liam and Christian received an award for Best Video Project in Renewable Energy, and they were awarded scholarship money. They worked on the project outside of school, and the time and energy they devoted to the project on top of their work schedule is commendable. I want to thank and give special recognition to Ms. Philcox for her time, effort, and commitment to the AP Capstone program, which is where these videos originated from. And I'm going to give Liam and Christian an opportunity to describe their project to you.
All right, so our project was on renewable energy and how that translates to Long Island, how we can implement more, or what are the problems that are facing Long Island in terms of renewable energy, what we can do to further the cause of creating clean, renewable energy for the future of Long Island.
The summit itself was a real experience. We got to meet with actual experts on our topic, and we got to read to them our ideas and their interpretations on our ideas. And at the end, when we, as a group of people from everyone around the Long Island, came together and presented each other's ideas for more solutions to improve renewable energy and other topics which the summit provided, it was a great experience, and we all learned a lot.
Thank you very much.
It's great to see our students do so well. Dan, thank you for creating an atmosphere in our high school where not only do our kids do very well, but they feel the ability to step forward, take these chances, because when they do, they go on and do great things. John, if you ever want to stop working on cars and take a job in public speaking, I think you could do that as well. Thank you again. Next, we have statements from residents. Janice?
Mr. Mike Unucci.
Good evening. Mike Unucci, Shoreham. A concern as a resident for me is the issue of transparency, or in other words, the process by which decisions are made that impact public institutions such as our district. I'd like to bring some items to the attention of the board with the hopes that we can gain some clarity tonight. Recently, we read in the newspaper of a $40,000 reduction in the field trip code, and I learned at a recent budget presentation that these funds were transferred to the occupational education code. What level of involvement did the Board of Education have? Was this a decision reached at a public meeting? I read in a Newsday article from April 25th that the change in funding was by consensus. The article also indicated that conversation occurred in text messages, emails, and meetings with school officials. Now, I recognize the importance of the board receiving current information from the district administration and being kept abreast of critical issues such as health and safety, and I'm not implying that the board have a public meeting every time that information needs to be shared. However, I am concerned with the perception or reality that decisions regarding the proposed budget were made behind closed doors rather than in a public forum. Second, at last evening's budget presentation, there was a question regarding the comparison between actual spending in the current year's budget versus proposed expenditures, and it was discussed that there's treasurer reports issued to the Board of Education on a monthly basis. I'm hoping in the interest of transparency that these treasurer's reports can begin to be made public so the residents of our community can be aware of the spending that goes on in our district. And I think that would be a great step moving forward to improve transparency in the district. And lastly, on a separate note, while somewhat related to transparency, the issue I'm excited to hear about tonight is the Meet the Candidates Night live streaming possibility. I see that it's on the agenda, and I do commend the board for considering this request. I think it would be a great way to engage our community and raise the awareness of the decisions that are happening in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice, anyone else?
No.
Mr. Lehrer, your superintendent's report?
Thank you. I have a prepared statement I'd like to read, but before that, I just want to invite everybody to the second annual STEM Symposium, which will be on Tuesday the 16th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. in our high school gymnasium. This is from Dr. Meyer. This event is a celebration of the district's accomplishments in STEM. There will be a fast-style symposium from 5:30 to 7, including interactive demonstrations by students and make and take STEM stations. Students can wander our art gallery, witness our robots competing in a friendly competition, and then build a small bot of their own. They will also have the opportunity to play math games with some of our faculty and take home some games to play as a family. There will be so much more as well. The evening will conclude with a mad science show from 7 to 8 p.m. This event promises to showcase our STEM accomplishments while providing a night of family fun, and we hope you can join us. At this point, I am almost certain that most of you are aware of recent Newsday articles about this year's senior class trip to Disney World. Since the first Newsday story was published on April 19th, with a follow-up article on April 26th, I felt the need to provide clarification on something. The fact is, council told the district that educational portions of any school-sponsored trip, and I repeat, educational portions of any school-sponsored trip must be paid for, but not the entire trip. The advice was sound and accurate. It was the prior administration that incorrectly concluded that all aspects of a trip that included educational components must be funded in full. As such, the advice of council was excellent and accurate, and the evolution of this decision was poorly reported by the media. The 2017-2018 budget accounts for a correct adherence to state education law governing field trips as recommended by council. It also reflects a sentiment shared by numerous community members. I, as superintendent, am always concerned about a successful budget vote and am responsible to the Board of Education and the school community I serve. As such, I respect and respond to the will of the people in hopes it meets their expectations or, more importantly, provides for the educational needs of our student body. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 2017-18 budget hearing report.
Good evening. Tonight is the budget hearing on the 2017-18 proposed budget that will be voted on by the community May 16th. On the ballot will be two different propositions. Proposition number 1 is the 2017-18 proposed budget, and Proposition 2 is the authorization to establish a capital reserve fund. The 2017-18 budget preserves all current and academic and interscholastic programs and broadens extracurricular offerings. The 2017-18 budget preserves the SWR standards by maintaining smaller class sizes, 19 to 24 at the elementary level, under 30 at the secondary level, all athletic programs at the middle school, JV, and varsity levels, music program at all levels for band, orchestra, and choral, current elective course options and opportunities. It continues to preserve the SWR standards by providing student academic support and enrichment opportunities, the co-curricular activities and clubs, and occupational education programs. We have always prided on preserving the SWR standards that go well beyond the New York State mandates. And the 2017-18 budget helps build on those standards by introducing a one-to-one Chromebook pilot program at the middle school for the 6th grade class. We are increasing math support at the secondary level, mental health support at the elementary level. We are adding AP capstone research, science research, and new clubs, 6 at the high school, 4 at the middle school, and 1 at the elementary level. It is important to continue to point out that the voter-approved bond from January 2015, which was $48.5 million, was partially subsidized by approximately $15 million out of the tax reserve fund, also known as the prior year's state aid funding, and the remaining $33.5 million needed to have bonds issued for them. That payment associated with the $33.5 million bond issue is in the 2017-18 budget. That payment's approximately $3.5 million. It is important to know that this is part of the 2017-18 budget. The 2016-17 budget had contained a payment associated with $10 million of the total of 33.5 million. So going into the 17-18 budget, we had about 800,000 related to this payment, but now the full payment's in from 17-18. With that payment in, the last year's budget reflected a 6% increase over the 2015-16 budget, and for the 17-18 budget, we are projecting a 3% increase over the 16-17 budget, approximately a little bit under $2.2 million worth of an increase. The summary of expenditures, this particular chart has been previously presented as we made changes to the line-by-line item detail prior to the 7-day window, which was 7 days prior to this hearing. Those changes occurred on Monday, last Monday. Between those line-by-line item changes, the funding changed in between categories. The total budget of $74,842,792 did not change. So I always put this particular slide up because this is what was presented at all budget meetings prior to today, and the revised expenditure category sheet is what I'm presenting to you now tonight. If you look at employee salaries, employee benefits, and debt and transfers, the sum of those three changes is a little bit more than 2.2 million. So those three lines that are contractual lines, they are tied to bargaining contracts, they are tied to pension contribution percentages, health insurance increases, makes up majority of the increase. The remaining categories net out to almost zero. If you look at the technology line, there's a $170,000 increase in that code. Majority of that increase pertains to the one-to-one Chromebook pilot. So we tried to break down a budget of $74 million that is comprised of many different budget lines into easily understandable categories. If we look at the top three categories, that makes up a little bit less than 80% of the total budget. And since the main entity here performing to our students is teaching, is staff to open up the buildings, it isn't shocking to see that employee salaries makes up majority of our budget. This particular chart shows you that the expenditure budget reflects the 3% increase, as I pointed out earlier. However, how it's going to be funded. When the voters vote on May 16th, they are voting on what the proposed expenditure budget is. However, they have to be aware, and they should be aware of how it's going to be funded. For the 2017-18 budget, we are projecting the tax levy to be 4.6951%. This is not above any 2% tax cap. We aren't trying to pierce. This is a simple majority vote. State aid reflects a 3% increase. The other local revenue, as I've presented in the past, reflects a reduction that ties back to a pilot agreement on a piece of property within the district that had expired. A pilot agreement is a payment in lieu of taxes. So the property owner, as opposed to paying property tax, enters into an arrangement with the Brookhaven Industrial Development Agency. In this case, since that agreement expired, it cost the district approximately $1.5 million in revenue. The district continues to apply reserves and fund balance to balance the budget. We anticipate appropriating fund balance of $4,737,647. We anticipate using funds from the Tax Reduction Reserve, also known as prior year state aid, approximately $330,000. $550,000 from the Employee Retirement System Reserve, $104,000 from the Unemployment Reserve, and $120,000 from the Workers' Compensation Reserve. So this is a balanced budget showing that expenditure total is $74,842,792 and how it will be funded from which revenue source. We also are required to present the budget in a three-part form. Each budget code has an assigned component to it. So as I summarized earlier by category, this chart here summarizes the budget by administrative, program, and capital. You could see that the main increase of the 2.11 million lives within the program component, and the next largest increase pertains to the capital component. The large portion of the capital component increase ties back to adding the bond payment into the 2017-18 budget. Let's not forget what a budget is. It is a roadmap of how the district plans to spend its money. It is the maximum amount of money the district can spend in a given year. Revenue and expenditures are based on forecasts, estimates, and contractual obligations. As we're trying to come up with the best plan for the 17-18 budget, we start this process inside of November, December, January, finalize it sometime in February, begin public presentations end of February, beginning of March. We are trying to forecast what's it going to be like in January 2018. Is it going to be a cold winter? So we don't anticipate the budget to come in perfect. We do anticipate that the actual expenditures can differ from what the voter-approved budget is. But it is important to not forget the budget number is the maximum amount that can be spent. It isn't the amount that we anticipate spending. In the event that any surplus funds are available at the end of the fiscal year, the Board of Education will determine the best use of these funds. Surplus funds can be applied to the following year's budget. Surplus funds could be applied to fund additional reserves. Surplus funds could also be used by applying additional fund balance to a particular budget and reducing the amount of the tax levy for that particular year. Those choices are always made during the budgeting process. As I mentioned earlier, the 2017-18 tax levy limit for this year is 4.6951%, and we plan on levying up to the full limit. This 4.6951% value was determined by following a formula provided by the New York State Comptroller's Office. It only requires a simple majority vote of 50% plus one. I continue to reiterate the district is not proposing to pierce the tax cap. There is a perception out there that the tax cap is a 2% tax cap. Anything above 2% requires a supermajority vote. We are only looking for a simple majority vote. We are not proposing to pierce the tax cap. The allowable tax levy limit with exclusions is $55,009,210, which reflects the 4.6951% increase over the previous year. It is important to understand that our tax levy formula, as we calculate this value, actually gets reduced by the value of building aid that is included inside the district's state aid allocation. If we look at the tax levy calculation in a little bit different format, before any of the exclusions, which are items that can increase the tax levy that are outside of the standard calculation, we start off with a negative 2.35% levy, or $1.2 million less than the 16-17 year. When we factor in the first payment related, the first capital exclusion related to the 2007 energy performance contract, it reduces our negative down to a negative 1.5%. The capital payment related to the energy performance contract from 2014 further reduces our negative levy to a negative 2.8%. However, when we have to now add back in to the formula the building aid that we anticipate receiving for 17-18, we are now back to a negative tax levy of $1.1 million, or negative 2.1%. If there wasn't a bond payment inside the 2017-18 budget, this would have been the tax levy for 2017-18. However, when we add the bond payment actually takes the negative 2.1088%. The bond payments related to a 6.8% increase. We come up to an allowable levy increase of 4.6951%. So I continue to point out the voter-approved bond referendum from January 2015, when we were proposing that to the taxpayers, we had told them there will be an associated payment. It will affect the expenditure budget. It will affect the future levies. We had also told them when state aid begins to be received on these bond projects, it will help offset the increase to the tax levy. That's what the building aid value is. So as we continue to receive state aid on completed projects, even though we're increasing the levy for 17-18 for this bond payment, it will eventually begin to be reduced based on the state aid coming in. Contingent budget facts. The contingent budget adopted by the Board of Education would always be less than the proposed budget. The tax levy must not be greater than the amount levied in 2016-17. All organizations, including not-for-profit organizations using district facilities, will be charged a fee for using the facilities. This also includes fields. The contingent budget must adhere to an administrative cap requirement. There is a formula related to the calculating the contingent budget as to, based on the amount of program to administrative component proportion. Whatever the required reductions are, they all can't come out of a single component code. So a portion will have to come out of the administrative component code also. Required reductions, all equipment funding must be removed from the budget, and the transfer to capital fund budget line must be removed from the budget. If we look at the contingent budget with some values, under the tax cap law, the 2017-18 levy must not be greater than the 16-17 levy of $52,542,274. The contingent budget for 2017-18 would be $72,375,856. To achieve that number, we have to reduce the expenditure budget by a little less than $2.5 million. Now, when we saw earlier that the 17-18 budget reflects a 3% increase over 16-17, that was a little bit more than $2.1 million. So it's important to see here that under a contingent budget, the expenditure budget will be less than the 16-17 budget. So we would be forced to operate the 17-18 school year with a budget that is less than the 16-17 budget. Required contingent budget reductions, equipment, $454,235. If under a contingent budget, there would not be a Chromebook pilot program. There would not be the purchase of additional technology equipment to outfit the new classroom additions. The transfer to capital fund line of $635,000 would also be required to be removed from the budget. Even after the required reductions, to be in compliance with the administrative cap requirement and to meet the required reduction amount of $2,466,000, $936, we would still have to reduce an additional $1,378,000. So a portion of the required reduction will come from budget codes within the administrative component, and the remaining reductions will come from budget codes within the program and/or capital components. The Board of Education has the ability that if the May budget was not to be successful, they do have the ability to put up a June budget. Whether the June budget is the same budget as the May budget, or a modified version, or they also have the ability to not incur the expense of a second budget vote and go directly to a contingent budget. How does this budget affect your tax bill? The Board of Education sets the tax levy. Right now, the tax levy is estimated to be 4.6951%. Some taxpayers will see an increase greater than 4.6951%, and some will see it less.